Hello everyone, my name's FlareBlitzed and welcome back to Venus Improbable Dream. I give myself some time to just sit and eat my lunch. To my relief, most of my nerves disappear once I'm back in the familiar routine. As I continue to eat, I glance down at a piece of paper sticking out from underneath my bag, the music list. I already hadn't paid attention to what had been written on it when the club member had given it to me, so curiously, I pick it up, balancing my lunchbox on my lap as I read. There are quite a few composers on here that I've never heard of. Bach and Mozart. I know those. Everything else is completely strange to me. Oh wait, Ave Maria. That's a traditional Western song, I think. I'm not that familiar with it though, and I don't recognise the name it's credited to. It begins to dawn on me even further that I really don't know much about classical music at all, considering that I've started to get involved with a club that specialises in it. It's not a good thing. Well, now is a better time than ever to study a little bit about classical music and the origins of music in itself. It's probably going to be a very long branch to see where it originally began from. Sliding the list into my open bag, I go back to eating my lunch worriedly. Worriedly, you say? Eventually, I had to prize myself from my favourite spot to start heading back to class. As I make my way up to the staircase, I find it difficult to leave my troubles behind. What am I going to do about all of this? The member application form and the music list both arrived in my hands within moments of each other. It seems to be a sign that the universe is desperately trying to point me towards a future where I begin letting myself be around others more, and working towards something fun alongside them. Sounds kind of superstitious, but there had been a notable serenity to it. It's like the path has been laid out before my feet, and all I have to do is walk it. Whether I dare to is a different matter. My head positively whirling, I make it to the top of the stairs, starting down the hallway that leads to my classroom. Is it staring down? Staring down the hallway that leads to my classroom? As I get closer, I pause for a minute, allowing the time to pass. This is another one of my daily routines, to attract as little attention as possible. I like to enter the room at the very last moment, when Mitsumoto sensei calls the class to order. This way, I avoid having to sit there and endure people's glances and whispers for however long it takes for class to start. I feel myself tense up a little in anticipation, and then the words I'm waiting for manifest themselves. Okay everyone, time to begin. That's my cue. I snap into action, darting through the door and launching myself into my seat as quietly and quickly as humanly possible. The years of practice have made me quite good at it. Before anyone can look at me, Matsumoto Sensei begins his lecture, forcing everyone to pay attention. It's a good system. I remove my bag from my shoulders and take out my book and stationery, ready to distract my mind from its perpetual nervous vibration with some mundane schoolwork. However, something stares up at me from the top of my desk, making such a thing impossible. The application form. It stayed there all this time then. The afternoon classes seem to have passed very slowly today, and I know exactly why. I've barely been able to concentrate on what Matsumoto Sensei has been saying. Unable to lose myself in the monotony of schoolwork like I wanted to. This application form just keeps bothering me. I had to put it away at the start of the first class. Too preoccupied with trying to distract myself, it's been peeking out from underneath my textbooks for the last 2 hours. A constant reminder that I have a huge decision to make. This wouldn't be as big a deal for ordinary students, but for me, it's life-altering. Will I be able to handle participating in the music club every day? Because it's not just having an extra routine, but it's also completely rebalancing the way that you think, going to something that is completely outside of your cyclical nature. I almost get goosebumps at the thought. It's so far out of my usual comfort zone. It's practically on another planet, another realm, another universe. This should make my decision very easy. Knee-jerk reaction. No, I won't do it. I can't. However, every time I try to settle on this choice, the conversation I had with Haruka last week pops back into my mind. It's like my fear of people and her passion for music are sitting on my shoulders. Like the classic angel and devil metaphor. Which one tries to guide me, the other butts in. There is something that I can't deny though. The way Hakura spoke about the reason she stays in the music club, her dream, hasn't left my mind since that day. Seeing someone so fragile be so persistent. I glance up at Matsumoto Sensei. He has his back to the room while he talks, writing more equations on the board. Without really knowing what I'm doing, I lift up my textbook slightly, sliding the lone piece of paper out from underneath them and placing it on top. I didn't think I was finished with my internal debate yet, but as if in a trance, I watch as my hands act on its own. Almost like somebody is controlling you like a puppet, on strings. Picking up my pen and bringing it down to the application form. Before I know it, I've written my name on the top of it. That's a good start. I don't know why, but I think I'm going to do this. Don't think, just do it. It's either do or do not. There is no try. Perhaps it's guilt. My parents and teachers seem to want me to become more sociable than anything. And if I don't give this a proper try, then I'll be letting them all down. I think that the person that you're letting yourself down is yourself if you don't try to break out of this barrier or this shell, that you have enclosed yourself in. Or maybe it's obligation. I'd essentially been muscled into this in the first place. If I say no, they may try to force it anyway. Or maybe it's Hakura. Or maybe it's both the music club and Hakura. Almost everything she said that day made no sense at all. A disabled, socially anxious girl who dreams of serenity of a room full of people with her music. It's almost laughable how unlikely it is that her dream will ever come true. And yet, I think her dream will come true. The fact that someone like her can still hang on to the tiniest little shred of hope and keep trying to move forwards despite it all, well, I guess it must have inspired me by the most minuscule of margins. I don't know what's going to come of this, and I'm not sure if I'll regret it massively, but I continue to write regardless until the entire application form is complete. I still don't manage to put my mind to work at all for the rest of the class, so I'll simply sit there, staring at the now filled in form, while Matsumoto Sensei continues to waffle on about equations in the background. When the lesson begins to wrap up, I put everything away into my bag. Only two things remain in my hands, the form and the music list. Like with equations and algebra, how many jobs do you think will require them? I would say about 90% of jobs do not require them. However, it is important to endure the stuff that you find tiresome, cumbersome, boring, and annoying, because it shows that you can apply yourself to something even though you're not really interested or motivated to learn about it. It also builds your own self up to go out there into the real world, and then be able to challenge stuff within a field that you like more, but then do stuff in that field which you don't necessarily want to do but have to do because it's part of the job or it's part of the career. Some people's hobbies are their careers and their source of income. Here we go. Here we go, leaving the room first. As always, I stalk the corridors quickly as if moving fast enough will prevent me from changing my mind. Okay, if you're going to do this, Kakeru, just get on with it. I notice the edges of the papers in my hand begin to tremble, realizing that it's my hands that are shaking. Just do something. Bracing myself and not knowing which direction I'm going to go in, I start to move. I burst into the club room rather ungracefully. I hadn't meant to be so clumsy, but my nerves have turned my limbs to jelly. About half of the club members are here, the others having not arrived from class yet. There are a few glances in my direction at the way I blundered into the room, but it doesn't turn into a stare fest, to my relief. With the adrenaline pumping through me, I almost don't notice Kudo-sensei approaching me. Akane, glad to see you back again. His easygoing smile is just a little bit reassuring. I shuffle towards him, my breath a little ragged from what I'm about to do. My form. I stumble over the words, jabbing the application form towards him. Apparently not put off by my awkwardness, he takes it from me and looks over it for a moment. Ah yes, so you're ready to give things a proper go then? I'm not entirely sure myself. However, I suck up my insecurities and nod, leaving myself no option but to commit. Fantastic! I'll sign this now. He goes over to the desk at the front of the room, leaning the form on it and adding his signature to the bottom to approve my membership. Seeing my fate for the rest of the school year. Come on now. Try and apply yourself as best as you can, even if your nerves are at their highest. But then again, my own, empathy is not as severe as other people's, because I won't be able to relate myself to this situation. But I think if you give yourself a go and still stumble at the end of the day, that's better than not giving it a go in the first place and not getting anything out of it. Like, you may think that you gave something a go but you didn't get anything out of it. That's not true. The experience that you gained throughout the way is something. And I think for Akane, any kind of experience that deals with some sort of social situation is good. I'm an official member of the music club. The revelation leaves me feeling both alarmed and numb at the same time. It's a really jarring sensation that I can't quite understand. Struggling to shake it off, I fix my attention back on Kudo-sensei, who returns to me with a jovial expression. That's all sorted. We can start setting you in properly today. His eyes land upon the piece of paper in my other hand. Ah, is that the list I sent to you earlier? I nod again, unable to force any words out until the throb in my head calms down. I'm glad you got it. Once you get a feel of the pieces, things will become much easier. That'll be where your free practice time comes in really handy. I look at him briefly in acknowledgement, remembering how important the free practice period is from my last club session. It'll give me the time to start catching up to everybody else. As more club members filter into the room, setting up their instruments, Kudo-sensei steps back with a grin, excusing me to the piano. It's probably almost time to start. Approaching the stall I've occupied twice already, I feel a fresh sense of trepidation, knowing that it'll be my regular seat as of today. I lower myself down onto it so gingerly. It's as though it's made of needles. I can't believe I've actually agreed to this. Things have strayed crazily from the path I was walking before, the path that felt the most comfortable to me, and had no unexpected events. Sometimes you need to break away from that path to better yourself, a better tomorrow for both yourself and those around you, your parents, your friends, your senseis. All I can pray for, as I sit there stiffly and wait for club activities to begin, is that this alternative path is still comfortable enough to follow. Indeed, if you was truly broken, then you would not have gone to the music club in the first place. if he was truly 100% isolated away from social interaction, you wouldn't respond to Sensei, you wouldn't go to this music club room. So there is still hope yet for Akane. And the more times he comes in here, the more hope he has. The first half of the club session passes as it had the previous 2 times. I don't think I've made any improvements whatsoever, but then I suppose I haven't really been practicing. This is something I'm currently attempting to remedy. After calling for free practice time, Kudo-sensei had made a beeline for me, apparently eager to help me with the piece I've been joining the other club members on. He's currently standing beside me, pointing out parts of the sheet music and elaborating on how the direction should be performed. I think learning a musical instrument is such a wonderful talent. It takes so much time, patience. I think that's what it is really, time and patience. Give yourself patience to learn the instrument, but also give yourself enough time to give yourself enough experience, or the experience needed to then press on. Make something of it more than just a hobby. It gives me another sense of nostalgia, reminding me of my old piano teacher. Funny how life seems to go in circles sometimes. After a few more run-throughs of various sections of the piece, he nods, seeming relatively satisfied. I think you understand it more thoroughly now. Would you agree? On nodding reply, his guidance had actually helped a little bit. Good. Keep going over it, and you'll have it sounding smooth soon. That alliteration, sounding smooth soon. He goes to leave, but then catches himself, seeming to have something else to say. By the way, how did you get on with Fujiwara? I was going to ask you on Friday, but I had to cancel on you. Recording the dark, empty music room and Hakura's flute echoing melodically from down the corridor, I almost started to grin. It had been a funny scenario. Some words just cannot escape my mouth. Kudo-sensei referring to the shorter conversation we'd had, during which I apologized for scaring her, and she hinted at wanting to talk to me again. Our meeting on Friday was much more in-depth. In fact, Kudo-sensei should probably be thanking Hakuro for having whatever crazy effect she had on me that made me fill out that application form, resulting in me even being here right now. Good. Talked a bit. More than I'm managing to do now. Kudo-sensei still doesn't seem offended by my awkwardness, however, apparently used to it already. I'm glad to hear it. It's nice to know that she's speaking to someone for a change. Might make her a little more confident. And I think likewise for Akane too. If you put 2 really nervous, antisocial people together, and both of them having their own kind of handicaps, one of them is a physical handicap and one of them a psychological handicap, but also physical handicap in its own way, then I think you can make them both more confident with each other and also other people because of that start of being near one another. But then again, I don't know how to talk sometimes. Maybe the advice I'm giving out here is just complete nonsense. For a second, I almost think that he's talking about me, considering how awful I am with people. Likewise, he might as well be. He grows thoughtful for a moment before piping up again. I won't mind if you have a little chat with her towards the end of our free practices, as long as you make sure you're improving with your play. Exactly. I think it'll do the both of you some good. Indeed. I had expected him to say something like that. I thought he'd be practically cracking the whip at my side, wanting me to get my playing up to scratch as quickly as possible. Doing something as quickly as possible is not the way forward. You need to practice a little bit and then take a break. That break implies that you should see Hakura because it benefits for both of you. Because you're both in the same scenario of being in an not chosen but kind of built up antisocial conundrum. The news that he'll allow me to disappear for a little while, if I feel like it, is a pleasant surprise. I'm not sure how often I'll use his free escape ticket, considering I have a lot of work to do, but I had told Hakuro that I'd talk to her today, so I'll take him up on it this time. Grateful for his leniency, I nod, and he smiles in return, striding off to leave me to my practicing. Well, I guess I've no choice but to keep advertising my inadequate piano skills to a room full of better musicians. I think everyone started out as musicians with no talent. Or no experience. Sorry, everyone has talent. No experience is where everyone starts off with. At least Kudo-sensei gave me some useful pointers today. After going over things several more times, I begin to feel a little burnt out from repeating the same thing, casting an eye up at the clock on the wall. I see that there's not too much time left until the end of the club meeting. I guess this is my cue to go talk to Haruka. I start to feel a bit bad for abandoning practice, but Kudo-sensei had explicitly stated that he was okay with me doing this, so I don't really have a reason to feel guilty. Gathering my things together, I make my way across the room towards the corridor. As I do, Kudo-sensei glances up from the paperwork on his desk, shooting me a brief smile of reassurance as he notices where I'm going. I'm lucky that he generally doesn't seem to mind. As soon as I enter the calmer atmosphere of the corridor, I seem to become both more relaxed and tense simultaneously. I guess it's a different kind of tension for what I feel around everybody else. I'm still nervous around Haruka, and there's no denying that. It's just that among the awkwardness, there's something that makes me feel a little less on the spot. Well, I know exactly what it is. She can't be in Haruka's world. I don't even have a face. Oh, what a world that would be. Shaking off my darkening thoughts, I approach the door, knocking to announce myself before heading inside. But there's still a sound of a piano or whatever it is. Hello. Haruka had stopped playing at the sound of my knock, as before, and is gazing hesitantly in my direction. It's me. She seems a little relieved to know who's visiting her. Hi, Kakeru. I wasn't sure you'd come. Were you practicing? Yes, Kudo-sensei was helping me with a piece. It's the reason I'd taken so long in getting here. I wanted to get at least some of his instructions into my head before I slipped away. Haruka nods quietly. How are you finding it? I'm not sure whether she's referring to that particular piece or the club as a whole. Both are almost equally overwhelming, though I assure that she means the former. A bit hard. I haven't played the piano for years. Haruka seems somewhat intrigued by this statement. So, you played when you were younger then? Mm-hmm. You nod in confirmation and then suddenly realise my mistake. You can't nod your way through the conversations, Kakeru. You've got to use your voice with Haruka. Taking a breath, I gear myself up to try to be more talkative. Yeah, I had private lessons. I feel like I've forgotten most of it. She exhales in vague amusement, although I get the sense that there's also an understanding about my hesitance about playing within it. I don't know the piece either, or many of the club's list at all. Haruka's face grows inquisitive again. They have a list? I mumble an affirmative noise. While taking my backpack from my shoulders to retrieve said list, Haruka listens with interest as I reel off some of the pieces on it. As I speak, her expression brightens, a knowing glint in her eyes as if she's quite familiar with a lot of the music I'm mentioning. It makes me feel even more of a failure for not knowing any of it. When I finish listing off the pieces, she seems to ponder something for a moment, pausing before she replies. Have you been to the library yet? No. Why? For some reason the question caught me off guard. A library is a place full of knowledge. The question caught me off guard, exactly. Not quite sure why the library is suddenly relevant to this situation. Because the library would have knowledge on the music. On music. Of stuff related to music. Thankfully, Haruka is quick to explain. It has a big sheet music section. You could borrow all sorts of things. Her meaning clicks into place in my mind. I'm guessing that I could probably find the sheet music for everything on this list there. That would make things a little easier. The other members already had theirs, and have studied it diligently. Getting my own copies would help me do the same. I could try reading it at home, like I did for my old piano teacher. Exactly. Ah, you're right. I should go there. She nods, and then looks down at the ground for a second, fidgeting and seeming sheepish. We could We could go now, if you want. She seems quite embarrassed to ask me, and I'm taken aback by the invitation. Is the library still open? I've never really spent any time there, considering I prefer to spend as much of my school time as possible hiding away from everyone. Then, okay, the library can get pretty crowded, but I was about to say, the library is usually quite an empty place. At least from when I was studying at university, it was a pretty empty place to go and find my books that I need for my studies, and also want for my studies. Yes, it stays open quite late, to let people study after class. I've been there this time before. Her face lightens a little as something crosses her mind. It's really quiet around now. She doesn't need to explain why that's something that makes her happy. My favourite type of room is an empty one. Before venturing into a basically unknown area of the school is not something I welcome, but considering how most students will have either gone home or still be in club meetings, it might not be so bad. Better than Watson in there in the middle of the day. Thinking it over, I reluctantly agree, acknowledging that I should really try to do what I can to improve my playing, since I've joined the club so late, and so out of practice to boot. Alright, do you think Kudo-sensei will mind? Glancing at the clock, I see that we still have a little club time left. He might have been okay with me coming in here, but the two of us abandoning the club to go off somewhere else might be pushing it a bit. Hakura looks conflicted for a moment, but seems to relax. We can always ask. I've left the club to go there before. I'm not entirely convinced that our request will be granted, but I'll go with it anyway. Okay, let's give it a try. Hakura nods, and I give her a minute to get her belongings together. I almost go to help, but remaining nerves keep me from moving. I also feel as though I'd probably just get in her way. After downing her school bag and picking up her flute case, her free hand moves towards the piano, feeling for the cane that's propped against it. It's almost as though that piano was intently there so that somehow we would be able to practice alongside Hakura in some way, because it could have been any other musical instrument, but it is the piano. She finds it quite easily, and I feel momentarily impressed. Although she's probably has a lot of practice with it, this is most likely a well-worn routine for her. When she turns to me, she wears an expression that betrays some visible nerves, and I can understand why. Despite the fact that the two of us have had several conversations, we're about to go somewhere together for the first time. While still not knowing each other very well, for her having a disability of this manner, it probably adds a whole heap of worry to it. I'm not so sure what to say to comfort her, especially because I'm anxious myself, so I'll simply open the door for her, chiding my inadequacies as I do so. As we both step out into the corridor, Hakura takes a slow but steady lead. I'm happy to trundle behind her for now, even unsure of myself and not wanting to draw too much attention. However, as we both join the bustle of the main room, at least half of the faces in the room swivel towards Hakura in surprise, and then to me by extension. I guess they're probably used to never seeing her here. Hakura continues towards Kudo-sensei's desk, and I do my best to tail her sheepishly, twisting my body slightly away from everybody and staring pointedly at the floor as I go. Thankfully, we don't have to try to get Kudo-sensei's attention, as he too turns his head to see what people are glancing at, wearing a similarly surprised look as he stands up. Fujiwara, Akane, this is a surprise. How can I help you? Can I help you with something, I mean? My lips part, but no words come out straight away. Still silenced by my nerves, to my relief, Hakura speaks for the both of us. The position of her body angled towards the sound of Kudo-sensei's voice. Would it be alright if we went to the library? I can show Akane where to get his music sheet for the group pieces. Her voice comes timidly, and I find myself contemplating her shyness. She can't truly know that any of the club members are looking at her, but judging by her slightly shaky demeanour, she can still somehow sense it. Kudo-sensei ponders her question for a moment, seeming disapproving at first, but after glancing at the clock and turning the matter over in his head, his expression lightens again. Yes, alright then. I suppose there's not a huge amount of club time left, and it's nice to see you so enthusiastic to learn the pieces, Akane. He directs the last part of his sentence to me, smiling encouragingly, and I avert my eyes, nodding. I'm not sure I'm exactly enthusiastic, but I'm doing it anyway. I'll see you again in the next club meeting. If there's anything you can't find, just let me know. I'm sure I'll be able to get hold of a photocopy from somewhere. Hey, good guy, Kudo-sensei. Haruka and I bow our heads in thanks and make our way towards the door, both of our postures hunched slightly in discomfort as we endure a few last interested looks from club members. The atmosphere changes once we get out of the club room, both of us basking in the emptiness of the hallway. Haruka turns to me slightly, seeming less rattled now that we're alone again. Are you ready to go? I collect myself, recalling her earlier reassurance that the library is quiet at this time of the day. Yeah, okay. I let Haruka go first as we climb the stairs, slowing my pace so that she can take her time. However, as we reach the floor that we need for the library, we end up striding side by side together, and a very unfamiliar feeling comes over me. I've never walked next to a blind person before. I'm not quite sure what to do with myself as I watch Haruka take relatively confident steps, her cane bobbing in front of her to guide her as she navigates the hallway. I almost feel as though I should be helping her out in some way, but strangely, she looks as though she knows exactly what she's doing. Of course, so I reel my concerns back in and simply focus on my own walking. I think that's the way that she would want it too. I do give her a bit of a wide berth though, just in case I bump into her or something, considering how awkward and clumsy I am. It wouldn't surprise me. After another minute or so, we reach the large double doors of the library's entrance. This is where Haruka hesitates for the first time since leaving the club room, looking a little unsure of herself. I'm guessing she doesn't come here on as much of a regular basis as the other places in school that she's familiar with. I take the initiative and push the door open, holding it for her. Here. She seems both surprised and glad I've made the first move, thanking me somewhat bashfully and heading inside. I have to admit, I've never really been here before. I think I came in a couple of times at the start of my first year, but found it too intimidating to keep up. It does feel a lot more inviting this time though, considering how quiet it is. Haruka had been right about that. A couple of scattered students are sitting at desks poring over their textbooks, but other than that it's practically deserted. Just what I like. The music section is over here. Catching my attention again, Haruka starts to head towards a section of bookshelves, and I follow her lead. I feel a bit guilty for not replying, having been in a slight daydream, but by the way she relaxes once I reach her side again, I assure that she can tell that I'm there, my footsteps probably. We take a left down a row of shelves and then she comes to a halt. Here it is. I'm glancing at the signs of the ends of the rows. I see that there are both sections of sheet music and books about various styles of popular music too. I didn't realise that the school put this much of a focus on music. Indeed, if there is interest in that area a lot, then the school will fund for the resources to be put into the school to then help the students out with that subject. If there's no interest in the subject, then the school wouldn't put any resources into helping their students. There's a lot here. Yes, I like this part of the library. They have a lot of things for musicians. You can find loads of classical sheet music here, for a lot of instruments. She turns slightly, her gaze moving fondly across the spines of her books as though she was actually looking at them. She really does love music. To me, it just looks like another bunch of shelves, the same as the rest of them, but to her, they seem to be a bit more precious. Turning back to me, she pulls herself out of a momentary reverie. Which pieces do you want to look for then? Feeling a bit foolish, I scrambled to retrieve the list from my bag again, realising that I should have just kept it out. The names of pieces and composers fill my vision again, just as perplexing as before. There's a Vivaldi one here, Four Seasons Spring. Hakura's expression shifts in recognition. Ah, that's a really famous one. Well, now I feel even more stupid for not knowing it. I never even heard of Vivaldi. Undeterred by my lack of reply, Hakura begins to stroll down the rows of books, looking thoughtful. We should find it down this end. It might be near the bottom. I follow her as she leads me down the shelves in alphabetical order, and her certainty strikes me as usual. How does she know where everything is? I suppose once you know where A is, you can guess the rest, but still, I don't think I'll ever get used to this side of her. After perusing the shelves a little longer, I spot the section sorted by the letter V, crouching down to search for the piece I need. It should be here. I add this as an afterthought, realising that Hakura probably doesn't realise that I'm essentially on the floor. The last thing she needs is for me to trip her up. She stands behind me while I eye the spines of the books, and thankfully, I spy a piano score collection that seems to contain several Vivaldi pieces. After flipping it over to read the back, I see that the one I need isn't here. Got it. I stand up again, watching as Hakura smiles in response. Great. What do you want to try and find next? I consult my list again, as we settle on another piece called Grymophebe. I don't know how to pronounce that. Number 1 by a composer called Sate. Heading back across the room to the right section of the alphabet. As I thumb in the books again in search for it, I realise something that causes me to pause for a moment. It's really nice of Hakura to help me like this, even though she can't technically look for the books with me. I take a brief glance over my shoulder at her. She stands there patiently, waiting for me to let her know whether I've found it or not. There's no real reason for her to be here, and yet she seems content to accompany me regardless. It's a really kind gesture, indeed it is, and you should thank her at the end of all this. Not only because of her disability, but also considering how bad her anxiety can be. And yours as well. Accepting the situation with a hint of gratitude, as well as a little jab of guilt. I turn my attention back to the shelf in front of me. Luckily, this piece is in stock too. That's 2 knocked off the list. Here it is. I think I'll just take these 2 today. Borrowing every piece on this list will probably be too overwhelming for now. I better just stick to a couple until I know them better. Hakura and I make our way to the front desk, where an unfortunately awkward conversation ensues. I've never taken anything out of the library before, so I don't really know how to go about it. Plus, I've never met the librarian before either, so that doesn't help me get my words out any easier. However, we manage to stumble through it. Hakura is still waiting quietly by my side, as though she has all of the time in the world. Once my books are checked out and stashed into my backpack, the 2 of us begin to make our way back down to the ground floor of the school. Club activities ended while we were still in the library, so we're free to go home. When we emerge into the late afternoon light, I find myself appreciating the emptiness of the streets, reflecting how void of people the school had been. It'll be a more comfortable walk home. The sentence makes sense, but somehow I read ahead of time so that it didn't make sense. Hakura and I seem to come to a stop simultaneously, unsure what to do next. I'm going this way. She gestures behind herself, pointing in the opposite direction from the way I need to go. I guess we live in different areas of the town. I'm the other way. She nods in acknowledgement, and then an awkward silence falls over us as we both climb up somewhat. Having never said goodbye to each other like this, in the past I've just left her in the music room. Recalling how nice she'd been earlier by introducing me to the library sheet music section and helping me out even though she didn't need to, I try to put my appreciation into words. My mouth doesn't seem to want to work with me, however. Thanks. Good job, Hakuro. Very articulate. Really gets the message across. Hakuro doesn't seem fazed by inadequate mumbling, though. No problem. So, I guess I'll see you tomorrow? Yeah. Okay. Seeming satisfied, she starts to turn away from me, signaling that it's time for us both to part ways with her today. Bye, Kakeru. See ya, Hakura. I start striding away down the street, taking a curious glance back at her. She's walking with as much ease as she had in the corridor earlier, focusing on the road ahead of me. I take a moment to properly process everything that happened today. I became an official member of the music club. That on its own is astounding and terrifying in equal measure. I'm sure my parents are going to flip when they find out. In a good way, of course. Once that was over, I actually attempted to practice my piano skills, getting some guidance from Kudo Sensei. Nerve-wracking, but I guess I'll get used to it more the more I do it. It'll be the main focus of my free time practice after all. Then, Hakura took me to the library and showed me where to find the sheet music I needed, going out of her way to help me. That had been unexpected. Even more unexpected, I suddenly realised is that when she asked if she'd see me tomorrow, I'd automatically agreed without a second thought. This is not in my nature. Hell, what am I saying? None of this is in my nature. Surprise, isn't it? This is a big revelation for you, my friend. It's strange how meeting up with Hakura in the little practice room is becoming a regular thing, part of a routine of my everyday school life. I almost consider it more integral than the club sessions themselves, but I guess that's because I feel slightly more comfortable in that smaller quiet room with her. Besides, the fact that she can't stare ludicrously at my condition goes a long way towards helping me relax around her a little, enough to have these little encounters and chats, awkward as they may be. As I continue along the mostly deserted streets, I contemplate the ethics of the situation. Is it selfish of me to enjoy her blindness that much? I wouldn't say enjoy, I would say more relieving. It sounds like an awful thing to think, rejoicing that she has what must be a crippling disability, just for my own comfort. I don't exactly mean all of that by it, of course, but it's heavily implied, and that makes me feel pretty bad about myself. Don't be. But then again, it's also how you word the situation itself that makes a difference, and also your emotion behind those words. The more I think about it though, the more I realise that in a way, it probably doesn't matter how I see it. Hakura's blind, and me being around or not doesn't change that. I guess it's just a factor in our circumstance, one that benefits me in a certain way, but not because I insist on it, just because it is what it is. That's what I tell myself, at least, as I pick up speed towards my house in an attempt to ignore the guilt that I'm starting to feel about it. I close the door behind me softly, kicking off my shoes as usual. I peer around the corner as I cross the room, wondering where my parents are. I catch sight of my dad sitting on the couch, but Mum's nowhere to be seen. So, alright son? He nods casually at me, and I return it without meeting his eyes. I'm wanting to get upstairs and begin my usual post-school routine, but before I can make a move, I hear my mother's voice coming from the kitchen. Is that Kakeru? I wait in place, a little disgruntled my escape attempt has been delayed for now. Mum comes out of the kitchen, a large pair of cooking chopsticks still in her hands. You're a little later today, even with your music club. What have you been up to? Her gaze is inquisitive, and it caused me to burn my own eyeline into the floor. Went to the library. I feel pretty on the spot, but knowing how much they'll appreciate it, I slide my bag from my shoulder, retrieving the 2 bits of sheet music I'd acquired with Hakuru for the club. I hold them out for them to see, and it has the effect I thought it might. Both sets of eyebrows raised with interest. You're going to learn these? To play them with the others? I can tell from the slightly incurious tone in her voice that the notion is exciting to her, though she's trying valiantly to hide it. I nod to confirm her assumption and then realise that I should probably just go ahead and drop the big bombshell that both of them are probably hoping to hear, the thing that I can't believe I'm about to say. I joined the club properly. I could have tried to put it more eloquently, but it seems that I don't need to. It seems that you don't need to. Hey! The appearances have changed somewhat. The pair of them start positively beaming with joy at the lackluster announcement, and it makes me cringe even more at the attention. Really? Oh, Kakeru, that's wonderful. Yeah, good job. The two of them spend another minute fussing over me, which, to be honest, is mostly just Mom's emphasizing how pleased she is, while Dad nods quietly in the background with a grin. It's pretty embarrassing, but as much as I can't wait to get out of their company, there is one thing about it that I appreciate. There is one thing about it that I appreciate about it. You put about it there twice. My parents are smiling about me for the first time in God knows how long. Because something that they worked towards for you has actually came true. And we skipped 2 days? It was Monday, but now it's Wednesday. Wednesday. We took another science quiz today to demonstrate our progress since the one we had last week. I wasn't too worried about it, being the guy who basically has a textbook attached to his face at all times during class. It hadn't seemed too difficult to me, my mind wandering to the 2 sheets of music in my bag. I feel as though the upcoming music club session would prove much more of a problem than the science quiz. I've been reading over the scores at home, between episodes of homework and gaming. For the last 2 days I started playing through them a little during the free club practice yesterday too. However, this doesn't give me any feelings of confidence about my abilities. Since becoming an official member of the music club, I haven't felt any further sense of belonging. The other students still terrify me too much for me to interact with any of them. And the piano stool I occupy doesn't seem any more familiar than it had the first time. It's still a very uncomfortable, intimidating place for me, and I'm really not sure how much I'll be able to get used to it. However, I do my best to crush these thoughts and push open the door. And the music chimes again. The room is almost pretty full, already pretty full. I'm making my way straight to the piano after giving Kudo Sensei a court nod as he smiles at me from his desk. Getting out my sheet music, I almost struggled to fit all 3 pieces on the stand, including the photocopied papers I'd been given on my first day. This hadn't gone unnoticed, as Kudo Sensei glances curiously at the books balanced against each other as he strides up to call attention to the group. That's a lot more music than you had on the other day. Is this from your recent trip to the library? I nod in reply, sliding the books momentarily out from behind each other so that he can see the titles from the list. Very good. I think we should focus on those pieces for now then, so you can get a proper feel for them with the assemble. Speaking of which, he directs his attention to the whole room, announcing the start of the club activities and brandishing his conductor's baton, which yet again, I didn't see him pick up. Does he just keep it in his pocket at all times, or somewhere else on his person? My demeanour relaxes ever so slightly as I enjoy the amusing image of him walking around school with it constantly up his sleeve, like an ever-prepared classical music wizard. Sadly, the moment isn't to last, as I'm rattled from my reverie by the impending task of trying to perform these pieces, that I barely know, with the group. Placing my hands haphazardly over the keys, I swallow as much of my fear as possible and attempt to do what's expected of me as well as I can. Ayup. There's gotta be a way for the text like back, history, skip, auto, save, load and settings to fade in and out like the transitions do. This isn't good. I'm doing my best to try and keep up with everyone, but these 2 new pieces are just as difficult for me as the other one had been. I may have been able to study the sheet music, but so far it's not given me the advantage I thought it might. It doesn't help that I don't really know these pieces at all. The Validity one is starting to ring a bell, probably something I've heard once before somewhere, but since I'm struggling to play my parts, I can't really figure out how it's supposed to sound. The Sati one, I've no clue. It's slow, so it gives me a few more milliseconds to remember what notes come next, but that's about the extent of what I can gain from it. I'm really not feeling good about myself right now. Alright, let's go back to the Validity. I really need you to emphasize that sprightly spring feeling, not so legato from the shadows, and give it some bounce in that first half, everyone. Ugh, this is the hardest one. I grudgingly pull the Vivaldi sheet music to the front of my stand, taking the few seconds I have to look over the troublesome bars and try to get them reabsorbed into my head. The main section isn't too bad, but there's a bit towards the middle where the focus moves more onto the piano, and I have to play a lead part. My fingers just trip over each other every time I try it. With no choice but to give it another go, I rest my hands on the keys and wait nervously for the cue to play. Kudo-sensei counts us in, and we begin performing as one unit. However, after the introductory section is over, and the twiddly, more flamboyant middle part comes in, the instruments start to pull away from each other as their owners grow less sure of themselves. A couple of the violinists seem to tread on each other's metaphorical feet as they try to enuate their separate, overlapping parts, which then throws me off even further. Don't listen to their performance, only focus on your performance. It's just like, I don't know, performing at the Olympics. If you try and focus on your opponents, you're going to end up slowing on yourself. But if you just focus on your own performance, then you are in sync with everyone else, as much as possible. When I come in with my elaborate part, I'm pretty sure I'm already off beat from the first note, and the fingers on my right hand almost start to cramp up as I try to force them to perform a complex dance across the keys. It's not really even a difficult part. I just can't get my hands to play what my eyes are reading yet. Somehow, I refrain from fainting in embarrassment and bumble through the rest of the piece, releasing a ragged breath that I haven't realized I had been holding when it finally comes to a close. This is too intense for me. Kudo-sensei looks around at everyone, regarding us with a mixture of dissatisfaction and optimism. At the moment, disappointment, but sees that in opportunity. A little better on the shadows. That middle section needs to be much more precise, but you can all focus on that during free practice. Think less about what other people are playing exactly, and get your own parts really locked in. Don't focus on everyone else. Think of your own. He casts across the room, looking for the clock. Alright, go ahead and practice. If anyone needs any further guidance, just give me a shout. The room bursts into a flurry of activity, the large group breaking down into smaller friendship groups, and the 2 violinists who had been struggling earlier grabbed Kudo-sensei straight away, eagerly wanting his help. My eyes move up to take in the music sheet again, but I can't summon enough enthusiasm to tear my hands from my lap. I'm not enjoying the music club at all, at least not today. Leaning back on the stool and sighing at the futility of it all, the voice in my head chips in once more with some unhelpful advice. Don't! Do not do that! Do not leave! I mean, I guess I could. Kudo-sensei can't exactly tackle me to the ground and chain me to the piano if I just try to go home. It just feels like anything I do today isn't going to work out. I need more time to figure out the pieces, and it's better to do it here than elsewhere. But I'm so frazzled I don't feel up to practicing in front of everyone. For a moment, I glance towards the door, the sight of it making my potential departure even more tempting. However, something triggers in the back of my mind, a memory of something I said yesterday, like I have for the last couple of days. I'll see you tomorrow, Haruka. I did it again. I told her that I'd be here without thinking about it, as if it was as much of a part of my day as brushing my teeth or doing my homework. Then again, it wasn't exactly a promise. I don't owe her anything. I could still just leave. No. As much as I want to just hightail out of here and get back to the comfort of my room, the little consents. What is that word I have left inside me prevents me from doing so. It's bad enough I'm skipping free practice, the most important part of club activities for me. I should at least say hi to Haruka like I said I would. Besides, that little room of hers is much more conducive to calming my racing thoughts down than here. Looking guiltily across at Kudo-sensei, I see that he's still coaching the violinists, his attention fully on them as he leans across to point at something on their sheet music. Seeing that my exit will go unnoticed, I stuff my own books into my bag and stride swiftly across the room, mumbling a silent apology inside my head for ducking out so shamelessly. Hopefully, once I'm away from the noise at least, I'll be a little less stressed out. Knocking on the door first, as if becoming the norm of the situation, I enter slowly. In contrast to my mood, which seems to be getting lower by the moment, Haruka greets me with her usual quiet yet somewhat light-hearted hello. How did group practice go today? Not a subject I particularly fancy talking about right now. Not great. I don't look at her, but I can still sense a slight shift in her expression. That's a shame. What happened? The pieces are hard. I haven't got used to them yet. This is something that's going to take a lot of time. It's not something that you can master in just one lesson. It takes a lot of time. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Haruka nod in acknowledgement. It must be tough playing with everyone else. Well, despite not having done it herself, she seems to realise my struggle to keep up with the group, although I guess of all people, she'd be the one to best understand the actual reasons why it's difficult for me. It still doesn't stop me feeling sorry for myself though, even though I'm just trying to improve my outlook. It doesn't seem to be working. Why did I see the word just from? I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working. I guess it's just... there we go. One of those days. I feel a little guilty. Realise that I've been standing in silence for a while, not giving Haruka anything to interact with or reply to, but just as I'm trying to come up with something to say, she speaks again. Was it Four Seasons Breeding that number 1 you were playing? The ones we got the other day? I nod, catching myself again and cursing my own stupidity internally. I'm glad she can't see the way I roll my eyes at myself for the fact I keep doing this. Yeah. There's a small pause before she pipes up again. I know some of the lead lines for those. We could try playing them together if you want. Surprised by her sudden offer, I raise my head, looking at her properly for the first time since I walked in here. She's gazing across the room, seeming both bashful and hopeful as she faces my direction. It's nice of her to offer to help me, but I feel like playing one-on-one with her would be pretty embarrassing. At my lack of reply, she starts to turn red, balling her hands into little fists. You don't have to. I just thought it might, you know, help a bit without the others. She contemplates the floor out of shyness. Though she can't see it, it makes me feel bad for potentially making it seem as though I don't want her help. It's true that I'm really not in the mood to practice anymore today, but at the same time, well, maybe playing with her might not be so bad. In the other room, there are so many people to judge me for my lackluster performance, especially Kudo-sensei. In here, there's only one, and I'm willing to bet that she wouldn't be too offended by my lack of skills, considering that I wouldn't be ruining anything for her. If I mess it up, it's not like she's counting on me to succeed unlike the others. Taking a breath and trying to keep my mind open, I cave in. Okay, we can try it. Haruka visibly relaxes at my words, seeming relieved. Alright, which one do you want to do first? She turns towards her sheet music stand, her right hand wavering slightly in the air until it finds one of the straps of her bag, sitting on a nearby chair. Maybe the Sati one? Might as well start with the easier piece. Haruka nods, fumbling with her bag for a moment before procuring a rather large folder from it. It looks as though it takes up almost all of the bag's space. She flicks through the pages until she finds what she wants, pulling out her own sheet music from that one, number one, and placing it on the stand. I think there are some music pieces out there that aren't particularly the best in their field, but probably second best in a lot of fields, so in that way it's a gateway towards learning a huge variety of other styles of music. I don't know. Busying myself with sitting at the piano and attempting to collect my thoughts, I don't bother to even question how a blind person learns and reads music. It's probably too complicated for me to process right now. Reading through the notes, rests and other performances' directions once more, I'm filled with a similar sense of dread to the one I felt in the other room, although there is less pressure in this scenario. After a minute, I hear Haruka take a deep breath in and out, preparing herself to play the flute. Shall we give it a try? I guess I have nothing to lose. Alright. We play through the piece together. It's a strange experience, going from a rendition by a mini orchestra to just 2 people. I still understand where we are in the piece, though, and Haruka is nice enough to slow the tempo down considerably so I have more time to think about what I'm doing on the fly. Tension is still seizing up my shoulders as I play, but it's not quite as bad as it had been before. I can get through it without my heart thundering. When the piece comes to an end, I glance at Haruka. She still has her eyes closed, a habit she seems to have when she plays the flute. After a moment, she opens them again, tilting her head in the direction of the piano. Was that any easier? A little. The corners of her mouth turn up slightly, upwards slightly. Not quite a smile, but a little more upbeat. I don't mind doing it again, or trying the other one. Feeling somewhat pitiful as though she's pondering to me, I agree regardless, thinking that I should make an effort to practice in some way, considering that I abandoned working on my own. The 2 of us continue to play through the 2 pieces when the time we have left. The experience is still quite disheartening, due to the fact I'm just not confident in my abilities at all. Half of it is your confidence, and half of it is in your experience, in your talents. Also, it strikes me that Haruka is probably just as good as most of the other club members, so that added sense of inadequacy is still there. However, I blunder through it out of guilt, and Haruka continues to be patient with me, despite how easy the pieces must seem to her. When I see that it's almost time to leave, I let her know, and we have one last run through of the piece we're focusing on, before packing up our things. I finish putting my music sheet away pretty quickly, and with nothing else to do, I watch Haruka as she closes her bag, detaching the various pieces of her flute and slotting them into their designated parts of the case. Do you feel any better about things now? She asks me this as she's putting the flute away. I don't want to make her feel as though her assistance was pointless, so I put it a little more optimistically than I feel. A bit. The slower tempo was good. That actually did help somewhat. If only the group were okay with playing everything at the speed of a funeral march. You trying to put some sort of humour in here, because that's quite dark humour. I just don't know the pieces well enough yet, I guess. It takes time. It's still a huge factor. If I'd already been familiar with them, this would be a lot easier. Checking the buckles on her flute case shut, Haruka turns back towards me thoughtfully. I know you said you hadn't been in the library much, but have you seen the CD room? Evidently not. Nothing comes to mind. No? It's at the back of the library. It has a stereo system and lots of CDs that you can check out like books. I bet they have those pieces there if you want to hear them properly. That's a good idea. I'm quiet for a few moments as I take in the information. This school really does have a lot of resources for musicians, and I hadn't realised the extent of it all, naturally considering how I lived my life before I get involved with this club. It's no wonder I hadn't noticed. I don't know, I might check it out. If I can borrow CDs with the pieces on, enabling me to hear them as they're supposed to be whatever I like, it would certainly help me out to figure out my own parts when I play. It's definitely something to think about. As I ponder this, I notice that Haruka looks a little antsy again, the blush creeping back into her cheeks. We can always go together. I love listening to music. The bell rings out across the school, announcing the end of club time, causing me to pause before I reply. Another invitation. This is getting to be something of a regular occurrence. Contemplating it for a moment, I realise it's probably not a good idea for the two of us to repeatedly skip free practice in order to go to the library. Kudo-sensei had let it slide the first time, probably figuring there had been a good thing for me to be introduced to a place where I can borrow the sheet music I need for the club activities, but I don't think he'll appreciate us swining off again to listen to music instead of playing it. I tell Haruka as much and her face drops slightly. You're right, I didn't think of that. The two of us linger for a moment, slightly disgruntled that Hakuro's good idea can't really be put into action. Then, remembering that the bell has already rung, we pick ourselves up and start making our way outside. We walk side by side again. The concept's slightly easier for me, now that I've done it before. That's the thing about reoccurring events. It gets more comfortable as time passes by. Each time becomes slightly more comfortable. We walk side by side again. The concept's slightly easier for me now that I've done it before. I still make sure that I'm not too close to Haruka though, just in case. I rack my brain trying to think of a way to convince Kudo-sensei to excuse us so we can go to the CD room tomorrow. But before I can drum up any solid suggestions, Haruka offers one of her own. If it's not any trouble, we could always go to the library at lunch. The hairs on the back of my neck momentarily bristle at the thought. The library must be pretty busy during lunchtime, and the mental image of the desk crowded with students makes me shudder. Won't it be busy? I've been there before, hardly anyone uses the CD room anymore. We round the corner, making our way through the banks of lockers, I'll just say locals, in the entryway, and out into the afternoon sun. I still haven't answered Haruka yet, but my whirling thoughts make it difficult. I do the same thing every day at lunchtime, dash away from class as soon as the bell rings, bolt down the school fields towards my favourite bench, and enjoy my food in blissful silence. It's my one solace in a routine otherwise fraught with stress, the one place I'm guaranteed to escape to, regardless of whatever else happens. If we go to the library, I try to shake off the growing feeling that I've been threatened. This is what happens when my daily rituals are thrown off balance or taken away from me. I find myself huffing in an attempt to do some sort of calm breathing, and realise that Haruka could probably tell how wound up I am all of a sudden. We come to a stop once we reach the road. At the point where we need to go our separate ways, Haruka faces my direction with concern on her face. I'm sorry. If I shouldn't have asked. Damn it, my discomfort must have been made clear as day, and now it's made her feel guilty of something she shouldn't. No, it's okay. Straighten up, I began to reason with myself. Importantly, I've been able to get audio copies of pieces of my own by doing this. It might really help me out in my struggle to learn them. As well as this, Haruka had only suggested it because she wants to lend me a hand. She's not demanding anything from me. She said that no one uses the CD room anymore. It might be deserted as quiet as the library had been when we looked for the sheet music. That wouldn't be so bad. Besides, we don't have to spend the whole lunch hour in there. We could listen to the tea pieces, check the CDs out, and then split off to enjoy the rest of our breaks in peace. I should be able to do that, shouldn't I? or just have a lunch break together. You mean that would be very good for the both of you? Glancing up at her uncomfortable expression, I'm hit with another pain of shame as I see how strongly she thinks she's upset me. I don't want to make her feel like that. She was kind enough to show me the music section at the library, then practice pieces she didn't need to play so that I could get a better feel for them. And now this. The least I could do is be grateful and take her up on it. I think we should go. Haruka looks up at the sound of my voice, seeming tense, but then her expression changes. Ah, okay, maybe tomorrow when lunch starts. I let my inhibitions slide, knowing that I can just enjoy a full normal lunch period the day after. Alright. Haruka seems pleased with my answer, her shoulders relaxing. Shall we meet outside the library doors? We can go to the CD room straight away. I'm sure we'll be the only ones in there. Her confidence of the fact calms my nerves a little. Okay, I guess I'll see you then. She nods, looking considerably more cheery than she had before. Hopefully this means that whatever bad feelings I've given her have disappeared. Bye, Kakeru. She turns away, heading down the road towards whichever part of town she lives in, and I do the same. As I turn our conversation over in my mind again, I find myself kind of shocked when I actually agree to buck my usual trends even more than the music club already does. Did you not say goodbye to her as well? That's rather rude. However, I can't ignore how considerate Haruka is being, especially with her nerves being as shaky as they must be like mine. That's what made me change my mind. I agree to it now. This CD room had better be good. Don't be ungrateful. The sky is a little gloomier today, covering everything and everyone with a constant drizzle. I guess rainy season has finally arrived. Another one of my little joys in life. I love the rain. But why do you love the rain? I guess we'll find out in the next time, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. With this tale, I'll start to formulate a little bit of an idea that a huge amount of the dialogue is going to be internal dialogue rather than external dialogue. What I mean by that is internal dialogue is stuff that you think about rather than saying. External dialogue is words that you're actually speaking out so that others can hear. So with Akane and his nervousness and his shyness and his dread of other people and being put in situations that he really doesn't like, as in any situations that involves social interactions, then it gets to a point where you can see the pieces that are forming in this story, and that it's either going to be a very gloomy end or a very happy end for at least one or both of the characters in this game. So that is Kakeru and Akane. So thank you all so much for watching, guys, and see you all in the next time of Venus Improbable Dream. The next episode is most likely going to be the last one of the demo. It's said that this demo takes up to 3 to 4 hours to complete, and as you can probably tell, we're about 3 to 3.25 hours into the way of the game, probably. But then again, it's also down to my reading speed being a bit longer, that it'll probably take like 4 to 5 hours. But thank you all so much for watching, guys, and take care of yourselves.